Director, and I have to admit, kind of an inventor of some pretty creative programs through the Andrew Young Foundation, and I'm sure Ambassador Young will speak to us about that. Thank you all for coming. We are the Wholistic Peace Institute. We've been in business, so to speak, as a nonprofit for 17 years. We started in 2001 with a 6-person Nobel Peace Laureate conference, which Senator Hatfield moderated for us, and the 10,000 student Dalai Lama Youth Summit, where he talked to him as a 1989 Nobel Peace Laureate, talked to them about nonviolence and how to solve conflict. Ever since then, we've had an ongoing student peace education program in the state. We do have a curriculum we put together, thanks to the Harold and Arlen Schnitzer Foundation, and that's in the Oregon school system. And it's really how to meet state social service standards by teaching about Nobel Peace Laureate. And if you'd like, any of you like a copy of that, I can send it to you as a PDF, email it to you. You'd have to print it out. Today, this is the 9th year of the Harold Schnitzer Spirit of Unity Award, where we give a financial endorsement to up to 10 peace clubs in middle and high schools. And this morning we were at Leslie Middle School in Salem, over 1,000 students, and so the ambassador gave a talk. He wowed them, quite frankly. And then we went up to Athey Creek in Tualatin, and same thing, different audience though, different kind of socioeconomic audience. And he again wowed them with a completely different approach. Then we had a forum with Mayor Ted Wheeler and some, government officials, head of ODOT and head of TriMet, et cetera, because as a former mayor, he's has some very good advice on Portland on how to develop our city and keep our infrastructure up to date and things of that nature. So it's very good. Tomorrow morning, I hate to say it, but we'll take him down to Canby about 8 o'clock, and he'll do it again with about 1,000 students, and we have some Spirit of Unity Awards to give away. So normally we would only do one, but in honor of the ambassador, we did 3 this year. And then after that, we'll be driving up to the Gates Foundation, where we're going to spend the afternoon and the evening with him, talking about his poverty reduction program around hydroponics and duckweed. And you might want to ask him about that. He has so many books written. It's been an honor and a privilege to know him for a couple months. And the Institute can recommend for the Nobel Peace Prize and meet their criteria. We've done it twice in the past, and we have nominated him for the 2018 Nobel Peace Prize for the work he's done. And so I think with that, I'm going to just turn it over to him, and he has some remarks he's going to make, and then of course we'll take some questions from you. I hope I didn't get in trouble.
Well, thank you very much. It's really embarrassing even to be associated with such wonderful people, and I always thought that Ted Turner should have won a Nobel Prize, and for all of his disarmament work with the Russians and his investigative work in the UN, but the Nobel people don't want anybody meddling in their business. And if you act like you want it, or you think you deserve it, you shouldn't get it. So I just want to, my disclaimer is that I'm not in that company. I'm trying to keep Martin Luther King's work alive. And let me just tell you what I'm thinking. Everybody's upset now. And I don't think you should be. I think the world is in better shape now than it's ever been in my lifetime, and that's 85 years. Now let me tell you why I say that. I say that because I have been made to understand that there are sectors of society that function independently. And because the sector of society that dominates the news is the political sector, we have a tendency of thinking that the political sector is running the world. That is absolutely stupid. And we should know better in a group like this. Why? Because the political sector, in order to get a leader, has to produce a majority vote. Now, when have you ever known the majority of the world trying to do the right thing? Never. And so every political leader is, by the very nature of democratic politics, a compromised character. And in this case, it's a character, a candidate that is reacting to the most turbulent period in the history of the planet. And when have you ever known the majority to understand the global turbulence or agree on what to do about it? Never. We're celebrating the 500th anniversary of the Protestant Reformation. You remember what happened when they invented the printing press? That's what caused the Protestant Reformation. They printed the Bible in Latin so that people could read it. And you had 100 years of war. 100-year war came about because of the printing press. But that was just the first 100 years. That 1490, I think, was a printing press somewhere around there. But 1611, they made the mistake of translating it into English. And it got printed in England. And what happened? People got to arguing so much about every little comma and quotation that you had the Anglicans with one point of view and the Methodists didn't like that, so they went somewhere and got fussing. The Baptists didn't like anything. The Congregationalists, which is my church, moved to Holland and then came to New England. And then the Pentecostals didn't like any of that, and the printing press caused so much confusion that it really took from 1490, and I say the date I pick is 1944, because that was the date that ended the Second World War and produced the Bretton Woods agreements that pulled financial services together. It created the United Nations around that time that pulled nations together. And we had the beginning of a framework of the World Bank and for a short period of time, from 1944 in 1974, we had a global consensus about values, vision, but also more important, currency. The Bretton Woods agreements tied everybody's currency to the dollar and the dollar to gold. And gold was registered at something like $35 an ounce. But from 1944 to 1974, you had 6% almost growth in almost every part of the world. We had the Marshall Plan, we had the revitalization of Japan, we had the emergence of anti-colonialism, and Ralph Bunche setting forth and I give Ralph Bunche is the leader of the first half of the 20th century that is most neglected and most ignored because he wanted it that way. He tried to turn down the Nobel Prize because he said, let me put it bluntly, if these white people knew what I was doing, I'd have been dead a long time ago. And that's bluntly. But there were a couple of close calls that he had. One, when Count Bernadette car was blown up in Israel, and he was supposed to be in that car, and missed his plane because there was fog over Cyprus where he was supposed to pick it up. And so he lived and ended up continuing Count Bernadette's work and creating the State of Israel and the two-state solution that is carried on to this day. But more than that, he led the decolonization efforts of the United Nations that sort of moved the world from about 60 nations to over 200. They don't teach us in school anything about that because it's too ordinary, it's too systematic, it's too intelligent, and it's too real. The world is working in large measure because of the quiet, behind-the-scenes work of Ralph Bunche, who received the Nobel Prize, but who didn't want the publicity that went with it, so he never talked about it. And so, of the leaders of the 20th century, I would put Ralph Bunche right along with Franklin Roosevelt in the first half of the 20th century as people who made the world make sense. But even at Ralph Bunche Middle School in Atlanta, and I try to go by there every so often, and because the students at Ralph Bunche School don't know who Ralph Bunche is. And I'm not even sure that the teachers do. But if you want to learn some more about it, there's a book called Ralph Bunche, An American Life by Brian Urquhart, who was his assistant during all his days at the United Nations. And it's a book that ought to be required reading. And all of the middle schools we go to, we ought to make sure that they get that book.
Yeah. Okay.
And because it really is a story of behind-the-scenes history making. But Ralph Bunche wasn't political. And that's why I say that politics isn't making sense. But Ralph Bunche represented civil society. And that's what That's what the United Nations represents. That's what your peaceful nonprofit organizations represent. That's what the church represents. So that's, even public education has to be considered part of civil society, because even though it gets government money, it is not an official organ advocating for the government. And you can still be a part of a public school and think for yourself and be free. And I'm a firm believer in public schools, though I don't have anything against charter schools. I think you have to be very careful, and forgive me, but most of the United States of American education system is still locked in the values and vision of 19th century Europe. And one of the reasons, that's what you're being taught. And one of the reasons why we can't get the rest of the world, all the world together, is we still have that Eurocentric view that they don't agree with. Even in Europe anymore. And, but that's where we are. Now, where we're making progress that is unbelievable, is in the business sector. And if you think that the printing press caused some trouble, what do you think about, and everybody knows Martin Luther stirred up the world. But what about Steve Jobs? And these daggum things. I told the kids, that when I was mayor, which was not long ago, 1982 to 1990, we had 4 floors of computers, mainframe computers, that were about 5 feet by 6 feet and were 10, 12 feet tall. And this little thing that everybody's got in their pocket has more capacity, memory, vision, capability than one of those things that used to fill up a room. And every kid has got one in his pocket. Can you imagine how long it's going to take us to develop a consensus around anything? But that's business. And not only are they making you grow, they're making you pay. This happens to be an iPhone 8. Now, I was doing very good with the iPhone 7. Until they announced the 8. And I didn't want the 8. But something popped up on here that said, you are eligible for an update in your software. Install, yes or no, it's free. You can't resist. You press install. That was the week they announced the 8 and the X. And I was on my way to Korea. And all of a sudden the thing stopped working. And I went to Apple, and they did it, and they said, this is okay. You need to go back to AT&T. There must be something wrong with your SIM card. And I go to AT&T, and they say, well, nothing wrong with your SIM card, but we don't know. It seems like the antenna in there is warped. Oh, by the way, if you turn this in, we'll give you $400 credit on the new one. Well, I didn't want a new one, and I shouldn't have needed a new one. But I had just spent a whole week in Korea without a phone. And you feel naked. You know, you sort of, but anyway, at 8. Now just because the 10 came out, I hope this one doesn't break down on me. If it does, I'm gonna switch to Samsung. Except that one blew up. Until they got a new one. But business is making tracks. And I recommend, the best book I've read in years is a book called Abundance by a fellow by the name of Peter Diamandis. And what he's saying is he's documenting what I'm saying. And what he's saying is things like, we might have the capacity through biogenetics to design and grow a new kidney in biometrics. We might even be able to manufacture, in fact we can already, I think, make a heart valve with a 3D printer. Can you imagine that? There's a godlike capacity in the hands of a nation or a world of fools. And it's going so fast that only the grace of God and the power of God and the people of God can keep us straight and hold us together. That's why one of the high points of this meeting was to go with Gary and Nancy to church. It was a church and it wasn't a church. It was Church of the Still Small Voice, where we sit quietly and wait on the Lord. And that's sort of where I'm going to quit right now, because that's as far as that's all I can give you. I can go on, I can tell you more analysis of everything I've talked about, but we got 3 sectors. But politics is stuck, because it's a majority that doesn't want to go forward, and they voted to find somebody dumb enough to believe that he could take them backwards, and call that making America great. It's making America stupid. It's making America irrelevant. It's making America incapable of coping with the world in which we live. And the Congress can't pass a health bill. They're not going to get this tax bill passed, because the things they want to do are wrong. They are lies. And somebody said that that was a frightening thing I read somewhere along the line, that evil comes forward in the name of good, and we are betrayed. And so we have evil democratically elected with the help of hacked cell phones. And yet, we can't blame this on the Russians. And we can't even blame Trump. I should have called his name. 45. We have to blame ourselves. And the reason we have to blame ourselves is that we have yet to produce an intelligent, democratic voice that has been able to make sense of this confused state we're in. And we're awful silent. And we spent all our money trying to say, he's bad. But we didn't hear a word about what's good. And that's what the world wants to know. The world wants to know where we go from here. And we're not going to get that from politics in my lifetime. And I plan to live another 15 years. In fact, I think everybody has got to figure out, you've got to at least be prepared to have enough vision that it'll take you 100 years to accomplish. So that at 20, 19, okay, you got 80 years to live. So what you do today, you got to realize that if you don't take care of that beautiful body you have, see, it's going to be creaking. Now, fortunately, I took pretty good care of mine, except for my knees. And I got a scooter that gets me by. But I didn't do anything to mess with my brain. See, and so you have to be very careful with the abuse you subject yourself to. Now, not only your brain, but your spirit. And one of the things that I was blessed with was a kind of indomitable spirit. And I got that from my grandmother first. And then it was reinforced by Martin Luther King. That he'd say, look, two things, I'll quote, you're going to die. Everybody's going to die. You know, death is the ultimate democracy. You don't have anything to say about when you die, how you die. The only thing you can say is, what is it you die for? And in order to be sure that you have something worth dying for, you've got to have something that you're willing to live, that you can live for every day, so that if this day is your last, it will be the day that defines your life. So be very, very careful. You've got to make it to 100. At least 100. By the time you get there, it might be 120. But if you're planning on 100, you know, chances are you'll be able to adjust to add a little time. Now, the other thing Martin said that's very relevant, that if you're going to be free, you've got to overcome the love of wealth and the fear of death. And if you're not greedy, nobody can buy you out. And if you're not afraid of death, nobody can scare you out. And then you can be free to make your own choices. And I think the key to our civil rights movement was there was nobody that was afraid to die, because we had all found something that was worth dying for. In fact, we were mad when Martin Luther King was killed and left us in hell. And he goes on to heaven. And now, don't look at me kind of funny because I say heaven and you're a scientist and all of that. You can't tell me about where your stuff is in the cloud. And yet you trust those numbers. Well, I trust my numbers. When I punch the cloud, my Bible comes out. And I can punch a certain number and I can go to the prophet Isaiah. And I can hear him say, wait on the Lord. Be of good courage and he will strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. They that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall walk and not get weary. They shall run and not faint. Wait on the Lord. God bless you. Gary said we should take a couple of questions.
I know this is a table from the University of Portland, mostly students, mostly political science, maybe students, or?
Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you?
Not much to be out the professors, but I'm still, they're much smarter than I am.
You're a wise man. But don't you believe it?
Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free, otherwise we'll just.
Yeah.
You talk about our political situation as being sort of stuck at the moment. Do you see a particular way from your experience for us to get our politics unstuck and moving toward a better place?
No. There are too many things happening. And the world is too complicated to develop a democratic consensus around almost anything. Now, I supported Hillary Clinton when she ran against Barack Obama. And I did that because I knew the world was a mess. And I figured she would be just as able to clean it up as anybody else, because she knew more about it. And I wrote him a check saying that I'm sorry I can't support you, but I will keep supporting you. If you don't win, I'll keep supporting you because I want you to be our president in 2016. And the reason I said that was I think we wasted the life and energy and brain power of the most visionary man that our century has produced recently. And he could not lead America. He had to spend time salvaging the world and protecting it from itself. So he had to bail out the banks. Hillary could have done that. But if Hillary had done it, we never would have let her bail them out from the top down. We would have raised hell with anybody white until they kept the small neighborhood banks also in power. The way you Harvard people understand economics. With Larry Summers, top down. Elizabeth Warren and others advocated a bottom up. Just think of what the world would have been like if, when we bailed out the banks for $900 billion, we had said,